Right, welcome fellow Rotarians and visiting guests. We're gonna get this meeting started. Last week I was out of town, so I want to thank Shane for taking over and making sure the program continue. We were a little bit burned out from working with the Irving Marathon and getting ready for the season start, and we figured last week would be the appropriate time to take off before things got busy. So thanks again, and thanks for covering Shane again. So with that, we're gonna get the meeting started. If you could please stand up, and we're gonna have Dr. Bill Bar lead us in prayer.
Have two announcements for the club. First off is that Ed McCarty got to come home from the hospital Tuesday night. He spent another week down there at the Colinas Hospital. Saw him a couple of times. His spirits were good, but he was having problem processing oxygen through his body, but he's doing better now. Second thing is, last night, my good friend John Van Buren was leaving the Rough Riders game and did a face plant in the parking lot and busted his face and his arm. And I've got a picture if you want to see. It's pretty gruesome, but we remember John. And whatever stories he tells, just be careful. Let's go to God in prayer. Eternal God, we give you thanks for the blessings of this day. Particularly give you thanks for the promise of cooler weather and rain in our future. We're so needy for both of those. We give you thanks for the work of our club for our Flag Day over Labor Day and all of that that has been going on. We ask your Spirit to bless that, to bless this club, to bless its work in our community, to bless the food that has been prepared for us, and to keep us this day in your peace. In the name of Christ, amen.
Thank you. And we are going to have Tom lead us in the pledge. Tom.
Let's place a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
And now we're going to have past President Shane lead us on a song and also help us introduce our visiting guest.
All right, while we're singing, can someone help me get that paper of our guests? Friends, will you join with me in singing? Oh, thanks, Bobby. You were right there. I can always count on you. Will y'all join me in singing God Bless America? God bless America, lands that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. All right, y'all may be seated. We will introduce our speaker later, but we have John Sherrow and Deborah Lynn with Visionary joining us once again. They're right here. So welcome y'all. We're glad to have you back. And without further ado, who's introducing our guest today? All right, Lazaro will be introducing our speaker today. So take it away, Lazaro.
As President?
Yes, sir.
I recognize that one of our recent high-spirited citizen recipients is on the screen.
Yes, we do indeed have the one and only Rick Lindsay, who was awarded on Tuesday with Irving High Spirited Citizen Award, which is really cool.
Thank you.
Yes, and Mara, you were a great host. It was a tremendous program.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad that I got to be there and see it all unfold. So very good. Thank you for that, past President Robert.
Awesome. And with that, I would like to recognize our Zoom attendees today. So on the top right, we have David Harris. Thank you for being on. Having us there, Mara Goss, again, thanks for being on. Rick Lindsay, as we mentioned. We have a dark space there, I don't know what that might be. But we also have Randy Hoover, John Briggs, and a Rotary logo online as well. So thanks for that. Our speaker today, we have Mr. John Briggs. John Briggs is a long time friend of Ryan Maney. When I asked him a few minutes ago how long he's known Ryan, he's known him since about 1999. And if you guys know Ryan, John, you're very lucky to know Ryan that long just because he's such a great person. So John is the president of Authentica LLC, and today he's going to be speaking on solutions to funding safer schools and connecting communities by harnessing the power of technology and human connection. So you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and the company as well. But without further ado, we're going to have John Briggs join us here, and John is going to help out with the presentation as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So my name is John Briggs. I live actually just north of here in Frisco. Although I am a native of the Northeast and a native of New Hampshire. So I am, like you, very much looking forward to next week and getting to some moderate temperatures after the summer we've had. Thanks for having me. I understand. I'm sorry?
Leave the microphone there.
All right.
Oh yes, for the people online.
Perfect. All right, thanks. So I'm excited to be here with you today and to share with you something that's new. In fact, it's sitting in the Apple Store right now, waiting to be released. And it was sort of serendipitous that Ryan called me. I think it was earlier this morning, and said, "Hey, look, would you mind coming down and spending some time with us?" And I said, "Yes, perfect," because I'd love to talk with you about what we've been working on. So I've been working on a project with a friend of mine whose name is Chris Moreland. Chris is also a resident of the Dallas area. He also has a consulting practice and does a lot of work in leadership as I do, and also in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And so maybe before we get into the presentation itself or into the conversation around the technology and what we hope to do with it, we can start with just a conversation here in the room. So think of someone who you have a relationship with or have had a connection with. How did it start? Sorry.
I said with a hi.
Yeah, it starts with a hello, sure. And then? What draws us together? Commonalities. So imagine you're walking down the street. Shane, where did you go to school?
Or college?
Yeah.
Austin College.
Austin, Texas. Austin College. Right. So Shane's walking down the street in Tokyo next month. You're gonna be on vacation in Tokyo. It's a great city. Enjoy yourself. That's right. Enjoy yourself. 10 days. I'll pay for it. Right. And you're walking down the street and you run into somebody who has an Austin College sweatshirt. Yeah. What do you do?
I'm gonna run and give him a hug.
You're gonna run and give him a hug, and that's what my friend Ryan Meany would do as well. You're absolutely right. And some of us are gonna be expressive like that, but when all of us stop and take pause to recognize the commonality we have, especially being on the other side of the world. Well, why is it that we have to be on the other side of the world? And that's our premise. So the idea that we're excited to share with you is something called the In Common app. And it's an in-common solution to funding safer schools. And I'll explain that in just a few minutes. But before we do, let me just tell you a little bit about the app itself. So hopefully in a very short period of time, the next week or 2 weeks, you'll be able to download the app, the In Common app from the Apple Store. When you do, you will register by putting in your phone number and email and a password. And then essentially you'll just fill out a series of about 50 questions. And they're random questions, they're multiple choice questions. None of them have personal identifiers. We're not asking for birth dates or social security numbers or addresses. What we are asking are things like, if you were to vacation, would you prefer to vacation in the mountains, the beach, the city, the lake, at home, etc., right? Are you a firstborn? Are you a middle child? Are you an only child? Are you a twin? Are you a multiple? Those kinds of questions to see what kinds of things we would have in common with each other. So essentially you fill out these questions and submit, And then a QR code is generated, and in your app, that QR code is then there for you to scan or to scan other QR codes of people with the app. And essentially it tells you what you have in common. So as an example, I might scan Shane's QR code, and it would say, we have these 8 things in common. What does having in common do for relationships? What does having something in common do for a relationship? It strengthens it, it accelerates it, right? If you think about relationships, relationships are built on commonalities and therefore built moving towards trust. And so the more trust that we have, the more belonging that we feel, the more included that we feel, the more likely we are to be able to make progress in that relationship and in the environment that we're in. Excuse me. So the not so adverse effects of the app. A high percentage of school, this is where we're going with the app. A high percentage of school employees and high school students are likely to see increased feelings of psychological and environmental safety. This may include, but is not limited to, feeling included and valued, experiencing a sense of belonging and understanding, having elevated levels of gratitude and patience, and demonstrating a new curiosity and respect for others. The most common side effects are general kindness and inclusion. Partners, teams, and groups are also likely to accelerate to and reach higher levels of engagement, trust, and safety, making working and learning together more meaningful and productive. Warning, the In Common app is absent of judgment and perfect for all ages. So, the In Common app. So what are we planning to do with it? The mission is to accelerate belonging, engagement, trust, and safety by harnessing the power of technology and that of human connection. So what's the vision? The vision is to use In Common to create meaningful connections, enhance interactions, and more favorable educational, business, and community outcomes in a safe space. The strategy is to use In Common, the app itself, at no cost, to provide it at no cost to Texas high school seniors and to all employees of Texas public schools at no cost. Then what we want to do is use the extension or the promotion of the app into our communities, into our businesses, into organizations like this that are really built around the community itself and making strong connections. I'll explain the funding of House Bill 3 here in just a few minutes. If we really think about the vision, so the app itself is something that, again, will connect us, will help us accelerate to having stronger relationships. But imagine having that app as a teacher. How would you use it? Well, you might use it to connect with a student that you're not able to connect with. You might use it to connect with new teachers in the teacher's lounge. An administrator might use it with their staff to help them in terms of building their team and their level of trust in the team. You might use it as a teacher as a math teacher, to teach ratios or to teach fractions. You might use it as a music teacher to teach music that has to do with safety and has to do with perseverance. So the idea of the vision is to create a safe space for learning, teaching, and administrating in public schools. The reason we chose this is because this is something that is not going to be caught up on one side of the aisle or the other. This is something that no matter what our views are, politically, religious views, sexual orientation views, any of that, the one thing we probably all can see in common is the idea that we want to have safer schools for our children and our teachers and administrators. So why is it important? First of all, let's constitute what safety is. So safety, yes, it's definitely having the metal detectors, and it may be having somebody who's a private closed police officer in schools. But safety is also something like 19 million children in the US go hungry every day. Is not having a meal an issue of safety? Of course it is. We've got mental health challenges, right? And traumatic experiences that kids have had, and that causes also safety issues. So when we talk about safety, we're really talking about funding universal safety for kids. I Googled safe learning space belonging, and I got 110,000 studies in 0.46 seconds. Studies from the National Institute of Health, studies from Oxford University, studies from Chief Learning Officer magazine. It goes on and on and on. We have better outcomes in business and in education when people feel safe and they feel like they can belong. Now, we do a lot of work in emotional intelligence, and fundamentally, we all have emotional needs. The one fundamental emotional need that must be satisfied before any other is that of safety. What's your first name? Deborah. You wouldn't hear Deborah stand up in the middle of this Rotary meeting and say, I'm not leaving this room if it's on fire. I'm not leaving this room until someone shows me respect, right? Safety is going to drive our behavior before anything else. So why is safety so important these days? Well, obviously with everything that's happening in our world, in our communities, in our schools, it's something that's obviously a very popular topic, but also in Texas it's a popular topic. House Bill 3 was passed this year in 2023. And House Bill 3 essentially is to fund safer schools. And it's a series of things that are recommendations and are going to be implemented in the schools and the school districts. Here's the challenge. The challenge is there's not enough money to go around. Each school is only going to get the equivalent of $15,000 to do all of these upgrades. It's just not enough. And we've got a political system where we don't necessarily want to raise taxes in Texas. That's one of the views. So how are we going to do it otherwise? I appreciate St. Mary's Law Review pointing out that we need a sustainable source of funding and that it needs to be a priority, and it needs to be a priority by move makers. Well, we're move makers. Here's the idea. The idea is this. Let's get this out into the schools. Let's get it in so we have stronger educational outcomes, and so we have stronger connections with both kids and adults. And then let's use it instead of, has anybody had a fundraiser, somebody come by with a fundraiser this year at all? What did they bring, Shane?
Chocolate bar.
Chocolate bars. Were the chocolate bars good? Yeah. Has anybody had the popcorn?
Oh.
Yeah. Right? So you think about the way the schools do fundraising. And I appreciate the fundraising, and I'm the first that's gonna say, yes, I'll absolutely get something. I'm not getting it for the popcorn, I'm doing it to support the school. So why don't we extend the app to the community, to our businesses? I used to manage managers who managed a group of 65 people around the United States. How cool would it be if I could have gone to that group and said, my group of managers, in particular that group of 8, and said, you know what? One thing we have in common is we all love sushi. We're going for sushi tonight. I can tell both by individual and a group what we all have in common, so I can use that to my advantage. So in business, yes, it's great. If I'm going to sell something, if I'm in Linda's coffee shop and I scan my code to the person that comes in every day and I find out we both like vacation in the mountains, well, guess what? Next time they come in, I'm gonna ask them, when do you get to the mountains and where are you going? It's human connection. If our communities have it, then that will fund safer schools. And we're calling it the 10 for 10 community in common. There are 2 million Texas high school seniors, and there are 400,000 public school educators and administrators and staff. Okay? 2.4 million that we'd like to give this app away to. Now, 49 cents of the 99 cents a month that the app will cost will go towards providing the app for that 2.4 million, app maintenance, app future development, and other administrative fees. Over 50% of the revenue, 50 cents on every 99 cents, is going to go directly to fund safer schools in Texas. So what does that look like? This is where it gets exciting. So as an example, if we have 2 million Texas high school students, 400,000 people employed by Texas schools, that means the total free users are 2.4 million users. Now imagine if each one of those users was able to enroll or re-enroll 10 people. Now when I say re-enroll as a freshman in high school, if I got 10 people who just said, would you mind re-enrolling every year, essentially signing up for the app every year, then I've got my 10, okay? If that happens, then we have 24 million users at 99 cents a month, charged up front for $11.88, which is probably less than what we paid Shane for the chocolate bar. You generate revenue of $268 million. $268 million. When multiplied by 51%, is now $145 million that's going to go directly back into our school systems for safer schools. Now, there's a difference between $11.88 and $12. So one of the things we are going to suggest is that if someone wants to round up, we take that 12 cents and that 12 cents goes directly to safer schools, adding another almost $3 million to the bottom line. Essentially, what then is available to safer schools is around $150 million. Now, depending on where you Google it, there are about 1,020 school districts in the state, which means that each school district would then have about $145,000 more in their budget annually, not once, annually, in this model. The current funding per school is $15,000. To add another $18,000 plus to that is 121% improvement. Now, let's just say, as an example, the same thing happened, but only 50% of students, and by the way, 57% of students, high school students, are in some kind of an extracurricular activity. So in terms of extracurriculars, this is another place where it can be used as a fundraiser, right? But if only 50% of high school students and 50% of employees were to participate, and they only got 5, what ends up coming back to the district is another $5,000. Or sorry, another back to each school is another $5,000, which is another 33% on top of that budget. So I've thrown a lot at you really fast. I'm curious to know what your questions are and what some of your insights.
So I take it meetings like this are where you would get the word out to the business community, because that would, I would think, be important, right?
Yes.
One of the things we're working with right now is the firefighters, because they need to raise money for a certain type of shield that they need. And so we're working with them we do preventative scanning. So everybody that comes in with that, we're going to give back 10% to do that. And to be honest, I would love to have a business that I'm also the chair for the American Lung Association to raise money. I would love to have my business give back to everybody that supported the business. I'm just curious how you get that word out. I mean, how do you know, it's a big endeavor just to do that. Because I would love to do the same thing for schools. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Yeah. I've got 5 kids. I supported it. They supported me. That's right. So, you know, it's like I just see a challenge there on how to make that happen. Yeah. Well, look, this is, there's always learning that happens, right? Anytime we do something like this. We have not yet piloted, but we have had significant conversations with both school administrators and also with teachers and staff and students. And one of the things we found is a universal and overwhelmingly positive response to the app and to the possibilities that exist by using the app in schools. So first, we'll have 2.4 million users using it, or at least available to them. In a promotion like this, where we're saying maybe a 10-day period or a week, as an example, in November every year, we have National School Safety Week. So if that week is an example where the week that Texas schools created a promotion and a fundraiser to drive this app into the communities, into business, right? So I used to work for an ophthalmology company in Fort Worth called Alcon. It's a global company. And I spent 15 years there. I would have been the dad that came in, instead of Girl Scout cookies or instead of crappy candy bars, I would have been the dad that came in with a sheet, the sign-up sheet that said, would you be willing to sign up for this? Now, our goal is also to be talking with businesses, local businesses, to be able to support this effort as well. And in having conversations with local businesses, there are actually several right here in Las Colinas and in Irving that have already said, yes, as soon as you can get that, we'll absolutely take it. So again, it's still 99 cents of every dollar there, or 50 cents of every dollar there to safer schools. So the accumulation of both the promotion from the schools and our own promotion in business, along with that, potentially in churches and those kinds of venues, is where we're hoping from kind of a grassroots campaign to start. Ideally, I'd like to get in front of Governor Rabbit, and be able to share this with him and figure out how we can do something with the state of Texas as it relates to implementation across the state as rapidly as possible. Because the point is, our schools aren't as safe as they could be, and the only thing we're waiting on is money. So the sooner we can do something, the sooner we're able to act on safe
So
schools.
within the app, it's basically gonna have businesses that support that. Is that?
Yes, there are businesses
Yeah, yeah.
will support the app, but businesses will be using the app, right?
Right,
So
right,
just
right.
their user fees will go ahead and that will be paying, and it'll go towards, again, that 10% community and common event.
Are there any other similar organizations that are doing something like this?
Not that we could find. I was just on the phone with a company that is based out of Sri Lanka and has done quite a bit of work in this kind of app, this kind of space, and it's not something that we know of, that there's anything else like it that's out there. Certainly not from a fundraising perspective and ability to generate revenue. Yes.
Are there, so from a mom's standpoint, are there safety features built in? I would be concerned that anybody using the app sees what interest my high school daughter has.
Right. Well, as a dad of 3 girls and as a brother of 3 sisters, that was something obviously that we thought of very early on. There are a few things. First, the data itself, there's no personal data, so there's no way to identify who's who. When the scan is done in person, right? So I'm scanning with you, Mom, or I'm scanning while I'm at my sporting event, or I'm scanning in school. So those are kind of in person anyways, those are in person exchanges, and both need to be willing to be able to have that happen. In addition, because there is real value in that data, especially from an educational perspective. So I started my career as a teacher. My family is in education. And if you think about the kinds of studies that we could do, understanding as an example, the dynamic of different groups. If I know that I have 4 different behavioral styles in a group, and they don't have that in common versus 4 behavioral styles that are in common, what is the outcome of the group, right? So now I can start looking at some of that data. So in terms of the macro data, that is something that we want to be able to keep available for studies and that kind of stuff, but not for sale. We don't have any personal identifiers, so there's nothing that identifies your address, your home, your social security number, your credit card. The only credit card that would go in is for payment, and obviously that's through the App Store, the Apple Store. Yeah. And of course, if we're going to be in school systems, we've got to make sure that that's safe. For those of you who are in business or have been in business or obviously also the work in the community around churches or organizations like this, how else might you see using something like this app?
I mean, for me, it's the same as businesses, to build leadership and trust among our different teams and throughout the congregation, because they have a real bad habit of, here's my group of friends that I sit near or I play bridge with them, and so I only sit with them at church and don't get to know more people. So there's a real advantage to having something like this that's a playful way to get to know each other better and say, oh, I didn't realize you had this same affinity for dogs that I have. Let's talk about that.
Right, so you and I have dogs in common, right? That's another one. Yes, and then there's a yes and, right? So imagine if you have a prayer group of 100 people, but you wanted smaller groups. Well, let's go to question number 16 and divide up into the 6 areas of the response, right? So there are ways to even use the app itself to generate both group dynamics and also group discussion.
I can see this being great use. I'm a physical therapist assistant, so I worked in geriatric settings for many years, skilled nursing, home health. But I could see therapists using this, like in skilled nursing, to help communicate with those patients and find out because a lot of times in therapy, if you know something that patient loves or is interested in, therapy is much more effective.
Yes, absolutely right. So again, if you recognize that I'm someone who likes to vacation in the city, and I'm not mobile at this time, right? My mobility is going to ensure my ability to go and enjoy the city, right? And so being able to have that conversation and again, get to the personal nature of things. I think there's also a sort of coming out of the pandemic, I think there's some atrophy in the muscle that we all have, which is connecting with people. You have kids, I have kids. For those of you who have been around kids recently, there's a lot of this happening and not a lot of this. And again, what we believe is use the technology, which by the way, is with you or them 24 hours a day. And that's an important thing. So one of the things we recognize with this app is this drives inclusion. People feel included, right? So why are we just using our efforts in the business environment where we spend less than 1% of our time in diversity, equity, inclusion, activity, or engagement when we're at work? Why don't we have something that all of the time, whether we're at work or we're at church or we're at the gym or we're with our family at home, that no matter where we are, we've got access to something like this that drives inclusion, that drives the idea that if we have something in common, that commonality is what ends up driving inclusion. So it's a sneaky way. It's a sneaky way to get to including people without having to worry about all of the politics and the conversations that lots of people are having around DEI initiatives on all sides of the equation. Okay. If there are no other questions, I put my contact information on the screen. For those of you who are at home, please feel free to reach out or connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to take a picture of the screen here if you'd like to be in contact. Again, we are still waiting for the app to be released, and then we'll be doing some testing, but hopefully in the next month or 2 months, you'll see this app out and being used, and I will make sure that one of the very first groups that has access to it is this group. I'll make sure Ryan has it and then extend it to all of you. Okay? Okay.
John? It's always helpful to know what the crowd, also, for things like conferences and going to different events where you have big crowds gathering. Maybe part of the registration is to download the app, gather information, so it allows the presenters to kind of draw the program that they're talking to based on what the needs and also the commonalities of those people are there to create more engagement. So good luck with the endeavor, and we look forward to hearing more news on how things go with that as well. So I think I left my notes here. So actually this one right here. But we do have a couple announcements coming up. There's going to be a past President's Council meeting that is going to be happening on the 28th of September from 10:30 in the morning to 11:45. We're going to be meeting right here at the table outside. So if you're a past president, make sure you're here on September 28th. From 10:30 in the morning to 11:45, we'll probably send that email out with additional information as well. At this time, do we have any announcements from the club? I do have a couple announcements myself from some other organizations that I'm making, but does anybody have an announcement for the club? Okay, so I got one from Cal. So we know we have Irving Cares coming. So if you are not going with the Rotary or with another organization, that is on September 15th, right, Kyle?
Yeah, it's next Friday.
Next Friday, yeah, so it should be a fun event. The following Friday, the Irving Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is having their 25th anniversary. So if you're in business or if you want to support that organization, you can also go to the Irving Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and get a ticket. It should be, last year they had about 400 people show up. It's at the Omni Hotel. It's a casino night style event, so that should be a lot of fun. We also are going to have a board meeting for the Irving Las Colinas Rotary Club board members next Thursday. I'll be sending out information on that. We usually have the first Thursday of the month, but since I was out last week, we're gonna go ahead and have that next week. The idea for that meeting is gonna be to have our members that are part of the different committees, talk to us about what their plans are and where they're at on their efforts to towards their goals that they're committed, and for them to present that following meeting, so that way we have members similar to what John was talking about, so that there's members that have interest on being part of maybe helping Shane with the Rotary students or working with the reading program, things like that, so that members know who is in charge of those committees, how they can get involved, and what some of those projects are as well. The last announcement that I do have is the Irving Oktoberfest, which is September 30th. So about 3 weeks from now, it's at the Toyota Music Factory. This is gonna be our 4th year celebrating that event. Last year, we had about 965 runners. So right now, we're trending around 2,400. So a little bit over 100% increase. So if you guys are around that day, you guys can come either to run, volunteer, cheer, or just kind of have a good time. It's gonna be at Toyota Music Factory. The first race starts at 7:30 in the morning. But it should be a really fun event, and so we have that going with the Urban Schools Foundation. So other than that, that's pretty much all the announcements that I have. Did I miss anything today? Anybody else needs, anybody online that has an announcement? Rick? Good to go? All right. Well, with that said, if you guys could stand up, we're gonna have Sylvia lead us on the oral recess.
Hey guys, bear with me, this is my first time. Please join me on our the 4-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First.
Is it the truth?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Fourth.
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And this meeting is adjourned. We'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.